We have a visitor from Philippines. I'm Erik Halkjaer from this magazine, Sveriges Natur. This is the magazine of Naturskyddsföreningen, the Swedish Society of Nature Conservation. As you hear, we will have this seminar in English, and it's on a rather, tougher, heavier note than the previous seminar. I quickly translated the title to Global Threats Against Environmental Defenders and Journalists. I would put a parenthesis around the last one there. But I used to be the president of Reportrar in Sweden, and we worked a lot with this issue too. Lia Mai Torres, you're from Center for Environmental Concerns in the Philippines, who work with another organization called IBON, and both of these organizations you get funding from SSNC, the Naturskyddsföreningen, for precisely the work to help land environmental defenders in Philippines. Last year, the organization Global Witness reported that for the decade from 2012 to 2021, 1,733 land and environmental defenders were killed. That's 173 per year, or would I say one every second day, even more. The deadliest countries are Mexico, Colombia, and the Philippines. Only the year 2021 was a sort of a record year, sadly, with 200 killings. And also journalists are targeted in a much more gruesome way than before. Journalists often covering environmental issues or land issues in India, Philippines, or in Latin America in the area surrounding the Amazon. And many of these organizations that we work with here in Sweden, for example, the SSNC, Naturskyddsföreningen, or other organizations working with land defenders or environmental defenders in countries in Africa, Latin America, Asia, have to deal with this issue. They are working with the people who have to flee, to have to hide, who are threatened, attacked because of their work, just to defend their land, or their work as fishermen or farmers. It's a very harsh reality. Just recently, the Swedish Minister of International Development and Trade, Johan Forssell, visited the Philippines. And he came back and he didn't meet one single representative from the civil society. Not one single defender of the land or environment. Although it's a country where this is it's a reality that these people need help and support, maybe from the Swedish government. Just short, Lia, what do you think about Mr. Forssell's visit to Philippines? Did he make the right choice to go and visit the corporations?
Yes, I think it's very disappointing for us when things that concern us Filipinos, we are not consulted, and it's mostly just the government and the corporations that like foreign diplomats or foreign ministers talk to. But actually it's local communities or ordinary people who are the most affected. I know Sweden also has a lot of business interests in the Philippines, and I think he should have consulted the people who those businesses will affect. So I hope that he will come back somehow and listen to the voices of the civil society, the people, the local communities, just so he knows what is really happening on the ground. I think it's part of like human rights due diligence to not talk only about the proposed projects to the investors, but talk about the people that these investors would affect.
If you could now just hear, I presented some numbers, and Mr. Forssell should have met these people, but if you have a Now you have the possibility to describe the situation. How would you describe it in the Philippines?
Yeah, it's right that the Philippines have been under attack. The Filipino environmental defenders have been under attack in the past years. Just from 2020 to 2022, under the COVID pandemic, we would think that the attacks would somehow lessen, but actually it did not. 250 environmental defenders have been killed in the Philippines. And these are ordinary people who are just trying to protect their natural resources where they depend on for their livelihood and other needs. So these killings are becoming more brutal. In a sense, I know it makes people uncomfortable to talk about it, but that's what actually is happening now. It's not just killing of individuals, but massacres that are happening in our country. So there is one incident where there are 9 indigenous people. They're called the Tumanduk indigenous people who were killed because they were opposing a large dam project. So at night while they were sleeping, the military came to their houses and killed them in their different houses. And that's just one occasion. And that's been happening in many other parts of the Philippines. There's what we call the Bloody Sunday, where in just one day, 9 land rights defenders were killed in different provinces, with 6 others arrested. So those are just a few incidences that are happening, and not just killings are happening, there are also arrests. Hundreds have been arrested, and under the COVID pandemic, some of them got sick inside the prison and actually died. And most of these arrests are because of planted evidence. So for example, you are against a mining corporation, they will come inside your house and then they will plant armalites, hand grenades, and then because of that, you'll say they will arrest you for having possession of these illegal firearms and explosives. But then again, it was planted in your house, like it was just put in a chair, put on a table. Like why will you even do that? And aside from arrests, there are also the worsening increase in the number of enforced disappearances, or where people just disappear. So when you speak out, after a few weeks or after a few months, nobody will ever see you again. So this actually happened to a close friend of mine from the university when he was supporting farmers in their claim for their land. And then just one day, his wife received a call that it's a video call that showed his husband blindfolded, gagged, and he has his hands bound in a dark room. And it was the military saying that you should tell your husband to admit that he is a rebel, a communist, or a terrorist. So that's really becoming worrisome because it's happening not just in the far-flung areas, it's happening to the people you know. And these people you know are good people and really dedicated people.
Could we, it's very hard to understand. I mean, in Sweden we complain because activists put their hand on a painting which is not even destroyed. But in this instance, people are killed, they disappear, they're tortured, they're threatened. What is it that they do? Why are they such a threat for the military or for these corporations?
The environmental defenders are the ones who are protecting the different ecosystems, from our oceans to the rivers to the forests. And that's why they oppose if there are destructive projects like mining, which are multi-million projects. And of course, people who oppose that are seen as anti-development, as the people who oppose progress and things like that. But it is actually them who see the impacts of these projects. So they oppose large dams, agribusiness plantations. So because they go against the interests of the corporations and go against the interests of the government that is working together with these corporations and gets money also from them, that's why they're attacked. So they use the military, the armed forces of the government, to protect corporations. And they also use the government's money, the taxpayers' money, to harm the citizens who give these taxes to the government. So it's really an issue of, we call it development aggression, where some people are sacrificed for the sake of so-called development, but it's actually income for only a few corporations in the government.
These people are also sometimes just common fishermen or fisherwomen or farmers who the only thing that they do is they do their small income job, but they're still a threat. How come?
Yes, it's usually the farmers, the fisherfolk, and indigenous people who are under attack because they are in the front lines or in the last frontiers of the remaining healthy ecosystems. So that's why they are opposed, because they are the ones who are seeing what is happening and they are the first ones to speak out. So it's really a way to silence opposition. This attacks on environmental defenders is not personal. It's political and it's also based on profit making.
Yes. Now you mentioned that the government is involved in these actions, but is there anything that the Philippine government, in Sweden you would sort of go to the government and ask them to do something. Is there anyone in the government who are trying to do something about this issue?
We have been trying to contact, of course, the government officials involved, but of course it's impossible to seek accountability from the military, from the police that actually does these attacks. So even if we try to talk to them and ask them, where are our friends? Can you please just show them to us? Can you follow due diligence? Then they will just say that, oh, they are rebels, they are communists, they are terrorists, and that's the end of the discussion. So we tried to raise this with policymakers, with lawmakers, but most of them also have interests in these destructive businesses such as mining. There are only a few policymakers that support progressive bills that we're proposing. And we have also talked to the Commission on Human Rights, the national human rights institution in the Philippines, but they have no teeth. Even if you say something and they note it and they even go to that area, they can just pass recommendations and they can say, like, the president, this happened, but then the president is not required to do something about the report. So it's really a system that encourages impunity. There is a lack of system to ensure accountability in the process. So we have also tried to have an independent investigation. We have called that on the Human Rights Council and the United Nations, but all they gave us is a UN joint program of technical assistance. And the committees there are formed, among others, of military and police. So how would the military and police help with the investigation? Because they won't, of course, investigate themselves, because they're the ones who are doing these attacks. So I think the government is very knowledgeable of these issues. It's just a matter of, will they do something about it?
Yes. And you, as an organization, and EBON, and with the help of the SNC, what are you trying to do?
We are doing many things. First of all is to counter the narrative on environmental defenders. Because in the Philippines, there is a practice called red tagging, where if you oppose the government or say something that is against their interests, they will call you a communist or a terrorist. Or a rebel, and that is the justification for further attacks. So we try to present what the environmental defenders are actually doing. So together with EBON and SSNC, we have this Environmental Heroes Award, where we recognize the nameless and faceless heroes of the environment. These are the indigenous people, the farmers, the fisherfolk, and the common people. We also have the annual State of the Philippine Environment Forum, where we show that what are the issues that are happening now and how are the environmental defenders addressing it. So really changing the narrative that the government is presenting. And we have also passed the Environmental Defense Bill to encourage more protection for environmental defenders. Of course, it's hard to pass bills, progressive bills in the government, but we're still trying to do it. And we also have formed what we call the Environmental Defenders Congress. It's the National Alliance of Environmental Defenders. It's hopefully a way to coordinate our efforts to address the issues that are happening in the environment. So it's a mixture of various things from movement building, and this movement will forward the change that we are proposing. And hopefully it will not just only be reactive, or our movement will not happen once the attacks happen, but then we should do something to prevent these from happening, because we do not want to lose more lives, because these defenders are important, especially in the climate crisis that we're facing now.
Yes. And Sweden as a nation, or Mr. Forsell, or you might even visit now on Monday the Minister of Foreign Affairs. What would be your message to him?
Sweden has actually given positive recommendations in the last Universal Periodic Review that we had. The Universal Periodic Review is a process under the Human Rights Council, and they gave a recommendation to address the extrajudicial killings in the Philippines, to address red tagging. But then we think that it's not just enough to say it. You should really find ways to convince the government to follow these recommendations, which are very much needed. So that's why what we're asking, hopefully, for also civil society organizations to support our call to address the human rights issues in the Philippines by also talking to these government representatives. Of course, we want to meet with them, but it also is a different impact if it is actually the people from Sweden who will talk to their government. Since even if it's not affecting them, it is an issue of what their government is doing in other countries as well. So Sweden can also ensure human rights due diligence with projects that it engages in the Philippines, not only from government projects, but also for corporations, ensuring that corporations and financial institutions follow human rights standards in the places where they're operating. And we also received news that a company from Sweden would like to sell like arms or fighter jets to the Philippines. And we think that's very concerning, because who are they going to use those weapons against? So it's against human rights defenders, of course, that they treat as enemies. So the government has a say in these matters. They have a say on what their corporations are doing to other countries. So I think it's very important for them, first of all, to listen, to meet with us, to give us some time, to share our stories.
Yeah.
And from then on, really take on action, not only listening to the voices of the corporations or the Philippine government, but also to civil society organizations and to environmental defenders.
So you could say that the message is not only for the minister or the government, it's also for the people here and in the park to engage themselves more in the situation in the Philippines, for example. Of course, there is a connection between the corporations and the trade and the development.
Yes. And it's really, we're really thankful for the work of SSNC in supporting Filipino environmental defenders. I mean, it has been a really great help for us, and I hope more organizations will also support the issues. And even if you're not engaged in organizations, just speaking out about these the situations that are happening and really starting the conversation, I think that's the first step.
Yes. Thank you, Lia, for your testimony. There's a possibility to listen to Lia later today, I think, at 5, with Karin, our General Secretary, will come and talk to you briefly also, if you would like to recommend anyone to come and listen to Lia again. And she's also here around the stage afterwards, if you would like to talk to her. Thank you, and tack så mycket. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everyone.